Friends, welcome back to the Nevada desert. Somehow I survived Halloween and my murderous cameraman Jim, which means good news for you, because there's going to be a first drive review of that, the 2017 Hyundai Elantra Sport. So even though it's past, the spirit of Halloween continues here at MotoMan. So I present you with a trick or a treat. Definitely a trick. Let's start out with a little bit of math here. When a car company decides to make a derivation of an existing car, they don't usually put a lot of effort into mechanical changes. Yeah, there's like Mercedes-Benz and AMG, but that's a $100,000 car. In the C segment, you're lucky to get fancy wheels. Here, there were 2 points of investment. The first was a totally different engine. It's a 1.6 liter 4-cylinder direct injected gasoline engine. And basically what this turbo engine does is it adds a lot of horsepower. So 201 horsepower comes at a relatively high engine speed, 6,000 RPM, but the torque, that's more important to us. 195 pound-feet of torque comes in at a really low 1,500 RPM, stays flat all the way up to 4,500 RPM. But let's put that aside because we need to unpack what it's connected to and how it gets the power to the road, and that is the transmission. Yes, there is a 7-speed dual clutch on offer. It is actually different than the one we drove in the Hyundai Eco version of this car. But really, the one we're excited about is a manual transmission, 6 forward gears with 3 pedals. So with that, I'm on the road, but I think I should get in the car and we should try it out. So first, a bit of a confession. Do you remember back in January when we drove the Elantra Limited together? You see, back then, the Hyundai folks shared the concept of this car, even details such as 200 horsepower and a fully independent rear suspension. They went so far as to showing us a picture of the car. But then they threatened bodily harm if we shared any of those details, even the concept of the car with you guys. So, 2 things. Number 1, an apology. And number 2, I think I want to make this up to you. And this really would be a first that you and I are doing this together in Hyundai. So let's press this button here, put it in gear here, and then maybe we'll put this on. Let's get the revs up, shall we? And then did you ever think that you and I would do that together in a Hyundai? Not a Genesis, a Hyundai. People, it's got a little bit of power. Like, this thing ain't a slouch. But wait a minute, let's try this again. Let's go down to 30 miles an hour, not downshift. So I'm in 4th gear, hit the gas, see if there's any power. Actually, this is a huge improvement over that Elantra Eco we drove, and I would say a good size improvement over the Limited. Is it the sharpness of that GTI we drove? No. But this is more than respectable, like to the point where I think I need to slow down because I don't want to meet the local constable here. Now let's try this trick again. Let's get around this turn here. Let's go back to 4 actually before we do this. Go back down to 30 miles an hour. You don't realize how fast this thing can get, especially when in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of Nevada. Actually, we're in California now. Okay, so 30 miles an hour. Like la-di-da-di-da. Let's say there's a camper van in front of us. Downshift, put our foot into it. More responsive, obviously, because we've downshifted, but still plenty of power. Like a surprising amount for this little car. Slowly but surely, I think we're moving up that driving dynamic spectrum just from power alone. But let's put aside the engine because the folks in Korea were kind enough to give us a manual transmission. Does it have quite the soul of a Miata? Not exactly. Throws a bit long, but other than that, it is a very pleasant, let's say, place of business, especially when matched with 201 horsepower and 195 pound-feet of torque. The second major investment that Hyundai made in the transition from a regular Elantra to Elantra Sport was a completely different rear suspension. So let's recap. In the Elantra Eco, the Elantra SE, and the Elantra Limited, there's like a modified twist beam suspension back there. If I'm honest, not something we love. But what they have done is rip that out, obviously watched our episodes and our complaints about the rear suspension, and have installed, or really I should say fitted, a completely different independent rear suspension. Now people, this is such a big deal. I had to do this and deliver this information in the middle of a road in Death Valley, California. Okay people, let's not mince words here. The minute you get behind the wheel of this thing, the first thing I noticed was that rear suspension. Actually, put aside the power, it was the suspension and how much more composed this thing is. So we've got some nice canyon roads here. By the way, these roads are stunning out here. You wouldn't do this with an Elantra normally. I'm going around a turn here probably too fast. Don't try this at home. But notice there was a little bit of lean. I would say there's some squat in the rear and the rear outside rear corner, but that's about the only complaint I got here. If I were to have one of these, maybe I'd want to tune it a little bit, get a stiffer tune. Maybe one suggestion in the future is to have an adjustable suspension, but that takes away from the concept of an inexpensive sports sedan that's in the C segment. Let's push it a little bit around this turn here. Again, please don't try this at home, but we never would have done this with an Elantra before. Again, a little bit of squat. Matter of fact, this is like, I've told you guys I used to own a Supra way back in the day, and that's the kind of car where you gotta let it decide where it wants to plant its ass. This is kind of similar, so let's go around this section here a little bit fast. We got a nice dip, a fast dip at that. If you were in that twist beam going through there, we would have been off in that ditch. Here, not only did it go around and just have a little bit of a squat, but ultimately the rear end is much more composed as opposed to being all over the road. Like, is it a GTI? I think not. But it's definitely somewhere in the middle of that spectrum we've talked about, where you got the Mazda 3 up here, the old Elantra, I should say, the Elantra Limited and Eco are down here. This is solidly, not even the middle, I'd say more above here. Excellent for a freshman effort in this segment.
One thing MotoMan likes is comparisons, and this vehicle compares very well against some of the competition, such as the Volkswagen GTI and the Ford Focus ST. However, those are much more sports car oriented vehicles. This, however, does compete favorably and very well with the Volkswagen Jetta GLI. That 2-liter turbo versus this 1.6-liter turbo, I'm telling you, they're right neck and neck. And this one, with the independent rear suspension, feels like it has a little bit more of a sophisticated ride.
So would you call me a Lotus guy?
Yeah.
So you know that that's my thing.
Absolutely.
But would you believe me if I told you that I absolutely love the Volkswagen GTI?
That's one of the few things that you have in common with Roman and I. We think it's the best hot hatch sold in North America.
Okay, so with that as like the lens, tell me what your feeling is in the driving dynamics here.
This car has surprised me in 3 ways, and only one thing that's not upset me, but just let me down a little tiny bit. Power delivery is excellent. This engine, 201 horsepower of turbocharged madness. It works great. Transmission's pretty good. Actually, I mean, you know, it's long throws. They're soft.
Yeah,
but
I thought the same thing on
the
throws. Yeah,
but it's easy to drive, very easy to drive, which is good for commuters to have something like that. And finally, the biggest reward of all, and you and I know agree on this, that rear end, having the multi-link independent rear suspension in this car has converted it from a rickety car that, yeah, could kind of go through traffic, but it wasn't really able to be a competent car you could throw through a corner. Now you can throw this into a corner hard and go through a pothole and whatnot and not lose control.
It transforms the car.
Absolutely
But
transforms
look
the
at
car.
this construction zone we're in.
This
you
is
and I
a
would be
cruddy
on the road before.
Oh,
Now
yeah.
we're not.
Yeah, and we've driven this car pretty hard all today, and I got to tell you,
That's an understatement.
it is an understatement. The only thing that lets me down about this car you can hear. Hear that?
I do.
This is not a harsh car to drive. Sound is the only problem. It needs a little bit more sound deadening, and that's it.
Is that because of the roads we've been on? Because Death Valley, not great roads.
Yeah, but even on the road we're on right now, which is a pretty smooth strip of asphalt, right?
This is brand new, as you can tell with all the construction.
Can you hear that hum?
I do.
Okay, and we're going 65 miles per hour right now. When we really build up speed, you can really hear it, and there's a hollow noise that comes through. I think it just needs a little bit more sound deadening material.
So in relation to like a Mazda of a couple of years ago, what do you think?
I think it's right there with the Mazda. And recently they made Mazdas much better in terms of sound deadening material, and that's what this car needs. You know, we're sitting not too far away from a Dodge Dart and a new one, newish.
Yeah.
And I think that this car is everything that car should have been.
Why would you say that?
The Dodge Dart, when I first saw the sketches, I always thought, that's a fast looking car. That thing's going to hum, man. That thing's going to have 200, 300 horsepower. I don't know. It's going to be fast. And it never really got there. And this is the car, in terms of performance, that I felt something like the Dodge Dart should have been.
Yeah, but this one is well screwed together. I like the design.
Yeah, I like the design as well. I really think they did a fantastic job. Really, other than the sound deadening material, everything else in this car has absolutely surpassed my expectations.
Is the desert like sun rotting your brain? I mean, what do you think of Dodge Dart?
Because the Dodge Dart was something that I wanted to surpass my expectations, and it never quite did that. Because I like the way it looks.
I'll admit, I was the same way on that one. And I am biased. I mean, I love Ralph. He's a good friend.
Ralph's great.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, the car was faster looking than it actually was.
Yeah.
This is a better driver's car all the way around. Can't argue with that.
No, you can't argue with that at all. So in summary, what do we got? Well, this is an instance where the reality exceeds expectations. And I'll be honest, I rolled into this with incredibly high expectations. And you know why. If you saw our round-the-block review of the GTI, I love these types of cars. But this is Hyundai's freshman effort, so I didn't know how the whole independent rear suspension and the 200 horsepower would work out on this platform. But as you have seen, it's worked out incredibly well. But this is only one part of the story. The other part I haven't covered because, as we've discussed in other episodes, I really don't like talking dollars because I want to tell you the story about the car. And really, you don't drive a payment or a price, you drive a car. But here's where I do need to bring up dollars. People, the car you're looking at here right now, this is the Elantra Sport, has a base price of like $21,600. This one has the only option, which is a premium package. Yes, you could consider the DCT an option, but you and I both know that's not an option for us. That's $2,400. So that is $24,000. The GTI Autobahn that you and I drove, not but 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, was $36,000. Even with some of you leaving comments on that episode saying you were able to buy one for $29,000, it's still $5 grand more, 20% more than this. And when you add in that nugget of information with everything we did about driving this car, and you heard what Nathan said, I am shocked how stupidly of a good deal that this thing is. So with that, I need to turn this around to you guys, and I already kind of told you what this question was going to be in the tech review. What would you choose? And the choices, well, I'm giving you defined parameters here. It is a GTI. I will, out of the kindness of my heart, throw in a GLI, a Focus ST, Civic Si, or anything I am not considering that is a C segment car. Can't be a Fiesta ST. And I want to know which you would choose and why out of this and all of those different cars I just gave you. Let me know in the comments below or via our social media, MotoManTV, all one word, MotoManTV, all one word, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And with that, I want to leave you with two things. Number one, make sure you download our fancy new mobile application, which you can download for free at Apple iTunes and Google Play. And oh, by the way, we are live on 5 international airlines. And number two, a fun fact. So if you've been following the show for all 7 years, one of our very early episodes, and when I say early, I mean like 2009, we shot at this very sign when we took an Audi diesel SUV from the hottest place on record in the low 48, here, Death Valley, to the coldest place on record in the lower 48, Peter's Sinks, Utah, and we did it on 1 tank of diesel fuel. Until I see you next time, bis später.